So far in 2024, there have been a total of 24 Fight of the Night bonuses awarded over the course of 35 events, and in this video, I want to rank every single one of them in the form of a tier list. Now, I know there's still some events yet to come, and if we need to amend this list, we can do so at a later date. I could always do an updated one at the end of the year, but I still wanted to get this one done now, and it'll be easier to go back and add things in later on. So we are going to go in chronological order. We will start with the month of January and work our way through the year. And like I said, I'm going to rank every single one of these Fight of the Nights. Along the way, I'll give you some context as well. So let us get started with the first Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. It came at UFC 297, which, if I'm not mistaken, was the second event of the year, and that is Sean Strickland and Dricus du Plessis. Now, I'm going to be putting this one into the D tier category. This was an okay fight. UFC 297 was kind of shit, though, if we're being honest, so maybe the bar was just set a little bit low. Also, this was a decent way to cap off the night, considering we just had Raquel Pennington and Myro Bueno Silva absolutely stink up the place right before it. I will say, however, I thought that Arnold Allen versus Movsar Evloev could have gotten this bonus instead, but for whatever reason, Dana White shat all over that fight at the post-fight press conference. And also, it seems like he's just content giving $50,000 bonuses to guys that are making, you know, 6-7 figures, rather than the guys lower on the card making, you know, less money than the bonus actually is. So I thought that the Fight of the Night bonus could have gone to someone else. That's part of the reason why I put it in D tier. Also, while it was a decent fight, it was not overly exciting. We didn't see any brutal knockdowns. You know, there was some blood, there was some swelling and things like that. It was pretty competitive, but as far as Fight of the Nights go, especially compared to some of the ones on this list, it just does not rank as high for me. Moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. This is going to be going to Azat Maxim versus Charles Johnson, and I'm putting this one into C tier. Okay, now this was a pretty good fight, pretty crazy fight, at least for the first 7 minutes or so. There was a knockdown in like the first 20 seconds. Azat Maxim landed a beautiful counter right hand on Charles Johnson, latched up an anaconda choke as well that was pretty tight. Charles Johnson managed to fight out of it. Then we saw Charles Johnson start to defend the takedowns, keep it on the feet more or less. In round 2, Charles Johnson almost got a guillotine himself, actually, as a way of defending a takedown from Azat. So for the first, 1.5 rounds, it was a pretty crazy back and forth. We had some moments that were close to being a finish, but not quite. After that, however, we start to see it, get a little bit more, I guess, normal. A little boring, but that might not be the right word, compared to the first 7 minutes at the very least. We saw Azat failing a bunch of takedowns. Charles Johnson just kind of getting pushed up against the cage, not having the energy to do the things he was doing in rounds 1 and 2. And, just stuff like that. We saw a lot more, just, I guess, stalemate, you could say, towards the end of that fight. But at the very least, for the first round and a half, fantastic, very fun fight. Anyways, moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. Now, this one's going to Amanda Lemos and Mackenzie Dern, and it's going into D tier. And no, not just because they are female, okay? But I will point out, if there's a Fight of the Night bonus given to women, that is usually a testament to how shit the card was. Although in this case, it's not even really true. This was UFC 298, Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria, which, if memory serves, we had Robert Whittaker and Paulo Costa on that card. We had Robert Whittaker get stunned with a wheel kick in the final seconds of round number 1. We had Robert Whittaker going on to kind of just piece up Paulo Costa, which in my opinion was more exciting than this fight could have ever been, to be quite frank, but was more exciting than it was, period. Okay, Amanda Lemos landed like 20 significant strikes over the course of those 15 minutes. Mackenzie Dern landed maybe 40 or something like that, half of them being on the ground. She had a bunch of control time with 0 submission attempts whatsoever. It just, to me, I have no fucking clue how this got Fight of the Night, but, I'm not the one that makes those decisions, unfortunately. Either way, dude, moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. And this is Daniel Zellhuber and Francisco Prado. Now I'm putting this one in C tier, okay? This fight was insane, although I will point out a little one-sided, at the very least for rounds 2 and rounds 3. Del Huber had some trouble in the first round getting a read on Francisco Prieto because he was marching forward like an absolute fucking maniac. Big looping shots, was not afraid to get countered whatsoever, constant forward pressure, and Del Huber had, you know, there was just a bit of a transition period maybe where he needed to get a read on him to be able to start having success. In rounds 2 and rounds 3 we saw that success, though that's when it became one-sided. Del Huber was basically just picking Prieto apart at range, cut him open, huge shots to the body, getting out of the way of most of the big shots that Prieto had to offer, though the occasional one would land. So I think the only reason this ended up getting fight of the night and not a performance bonus was because Francisco Prieto is so fucking tough, which is kind of a theme that we see in fight of the nights. It's usually one guy who could have been finished 100 times just keeps fucking going. Either way, dude, moving on to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded in 2024, and that goes to Vinicius Oliveira and Bernardo Sopaj, and I will be putting this one into C tier. Now, if this was like a finish tier list of 2024, which maybe I will do at some point, although that's a lot of them, maybe I'll just do performance bonuses because this one also got a performance bonus. Absolutely stunning ending, which came late in the third round, which is probably why it ended up getting both fight of the night and performance. It was a pretty back and forth fight between a striker and a grappler. We saw Bernardo Sopaj have a lot of success taking down Vinicius Oliveira, keeping him there, managing to do decent work, wasn't just laying on top of him, but was trying to advance, trying to do damage and things like that. Then we would see Vinicius Oliveira get up or reverse it and start to do damage of his own from top position, right? Both of these guys had really good moments throughout rounds 1 and rounds 2, but the finish was absolutely fucking chef's kiss. Beautiful flying knee from Vinicius Oliveira, flew across the cage and just flatline KO'd Bernardo Sopaj. So I don't even know if the finish had happened. I don't know that it would have got fight of the night. Maybe it would have, just because of the back and forth nature. But up until that point, there wasn't any crazy moments where you thought somebody was going to get flatline KO'd, or, you know, wasn't a whole lot of blood, anything like that. But that finish just was the icing on the cake. Okay, moving on to the next fight of the night. In 2024, I might catch a little bit of slack for putting this one in D tier, but I don't really care. It's going there anyways. That is Dustin Poirier and Benoit Saint Denis. I need to move over Amanda Lemos a little bit so we're going to have some more going into D tier, okay? Now, the reason I don't rank this one highly is because it was a second round knockout. And I feel like, and also it wasn't even late in the second round. I think it was maybe about the halfway mark. For me, I need longer fights to be fight of the night. I need fights that almost go the distance, or they're just so fucking crazy that there's no other option, right? Round 1 of this fight was good. It was fun. But often it was Dustin Poirier trying to get back to his feet after jumping a failed guillotine. Like, some of them were a little tight, but as the round went on, they definitely weren't tight. And people, well, myself, you know, but his coaches as well, were getting frustrated with him continuously jumping guillotine. And you know, but he never stopped it, because don't be silly, of course, just jump the gilly. But then we got him, you know, Benoit Saint Denis gassed in round number 2, and Dustin Poirier is just kind of putting on like a counter boxing clinic and knocks him out pretty quickly. There wasn't really any moments where you thought Poirier was in a whole lot of trouble. Aside from the first round, he was able to defend pretty well on the mat, but even still, there wasn't any moments where you're like, oh my god, Poirier is about to get finished on the ground. So there wasn't a massive back and forth. It was mostly Poirier getting back to his feet. And then in round 2, Benoit Saint Denis was gassed and Poirier just knocked him out. So performance of the night, I would have absolutely agreed with. But when we had Petr Yan versus Song Yadong on this card, we also had Gilbert Burns versus Jack Della Maddalena on this card, which JDM got a performance bonus for that fight. And even though it was a late third round stoppage, why they could have just flipped them. You know, Poirier could have got a performance bonus and JDM could have got fight of the night. But I don't know, man. Either way, as far as fight of the nights go, not very highly ranked for me, just because of the length of time that was there. Also, the first round wasn't insanely eventful. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded in 2024, and that is Jarno Aarons versus Steve Wynn. I'm putting this one in B tier. This fight was fucking great. Okay, this was a fantastic fight. If you forgot this fight, I suggest going back and rewatching it, because it was basically only stand up. They were just beating the fuck out of each other. Both guys showed crazy levels of toughness. This is, unlike what we spoke about earlier with Prado, where one guy's just so tough that the fight continues. This was both guys being that tough. There were multiple moments throughout this fight where either guy could have gone down and they just didn't. Both of their legs were chopped to shit. Both of their faces were masks of blood. Jarno Aarons was getting the better of the exchanges. Like, dude, Steve Wynn's face was just literally pure red, okay? But still, either guy could have been knocked out, but they just didn't, okay? We had a few grappling exchanges in this fight, but it was Steve Wynn going for guillotine. So even when they slowed down to grapple, it was still a guy going for a finish the entire fucking time, which I absolutely love to see. So thank you to Jarno Aarons and Steve Wynn for this fantastic fight, and it definitely belongs in B tier. Honestly, dude, if you go back and rewatch it and you think it should be higher, let me know in the comments below, because it was that good. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus in 2024 goes to Ibo Aslan versus Anton Turkalj. I'm putting this one in D tier. Now, it had its moments. Okay, it wasn't a bad fight by any means. It was very... To be clear, none of these fights on this list are bad fights, right? It's all relative. So even fights that I'm putting in the D tier category, while it might seem like I'm shitting on them, it's just relative to some of the fights that we have in the A and the S tier and even in the B tier. So that's all. But in round number one, it was pretty uneventful. We had, they were kind of trying to figure each other out. It was a bit of a feeling out process. No guy landed anything super significant, at least not for the vast majority of round number one. Now, round two was fucking insane. So if this was like round of the year, maybe this would be a contender for me, but round two was the only good round, really. Absolute mayhem. Anton Turkalj lands a massive knee to the chin of Ibo Aslan, followed up by a left hook. The only reason I think that didn't result in a finish was because the top of Turkalj's foot clipped the cup of Ibo Aslan on the way up, and Ibo, very cleverly got a timeout due to it and took his time recovering, so good for him there. But then we got into round three, and just a minute and a half in, Ibo Aslan lands one big shot and Turkalj goes down, and that's the end of the fight. So again, if it was, round of the year or round of the night, I would rank this one very highly, but it wasn't that. And most of the fight was, not as eventful as that second round, and it ended pretty shortly thereafter. So that's why it's in D tier. Anyways, dude, moving on to the first fight to go into the D tier category. And that is going to be, I love this fight so much, Morgan Charrier versus Chepe Mariscal. This is one of my favorite fights of 2024, period. Okay, round one was pretty good. The fight got better as it went on, but round one was pretty good. There was quite a bit of cage wrestling, but both guys made that aspect so much more enjoyable to watch than most other fighters do. Both of them were doing damage. When they separated off the fence, both guys, you could tell, had been beaten up there. They were bleeding, or they were swollen, or whatever. They were landing big knees to the body, not just little tapping knees to try to keep busy so the ref doesn't separate them. They were both landing elbows and punches and things like that, but with, malintent. They weren't just trying to keep busy. So when they separated, both of them looked like they had been in a fight, and then they went on to have crazy exchanges on the feet as well for the rest of that round. Round two was basically only on the feet, and one of the reasons why I love this fight so much more than others is because while it was very exciting and there was a lot of damage being done and lots of impact done by both guys, both of them have such good technique in the striking department, and they're both very different styles. Morgan Charrier, much more willing to be at range, kind of pick you apart, set traps, and things like that, poke and prod you, whereas Chepe Mariscal is trying to get inside and land big hooks and shit like that. But both of them displayed great technique, really good defense, but we're still, getting damaged because the other guy that they're fighting is so good as well. And then in the third round, we had Chepe Mariscal teeing off on Morgan Charrier, and he does this beautiful duck under, wraps around the back. Absolutely fucking it was so slick. I love seeing grappling exchanges like that. Also, it showed very high fight IQ because he was in danger up against the fence, getting landed on, Chepe Mariscal reverses it, starts doing damage of his own. Like, this was a very back and forth, very competitive, very high level fight, and I fucking love it. I will also point out, when I watched it live, I'd picked Chepe Mariscal to win this fight, and I believe he was an underdog, and I was fine with the decision. But watching it back, I think that Charrier could have won as well. It was a split decision, so it was close, but I'm just like, real fucking razor thin. There's arguments for both, but I thought Morgan Charrier might have edged it out watching it back. But either way, dude, god damn, what a good fight. Let's move on to the next fight of the night of 2024, and that is Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Now, I'm putting this one in B tier, and I think that's fair, although I do think some people will disagree with me and think it should be higher. But I want to point out a few things. Kind of like we were talking about with Zellhuber and Prado. This was not like an overly competitive fight, right? Ever since Max Holloway landed that spinning back kick in the first round that Justin Gaethje ducked into and broke his nose on, it kind of just snowballed in favor of Max. I mean, there was that one moment where Gaethje unofficially dropped Max because for whatever reason that did not count as a knockdown, which is a little insane to me, but, you know, this was basically Max Holloway beating up Justin Gaethje for like 20 out of the 25 minutes. Maybe the last 10 seconds is what sealed the deal and giving it fight of the night. But there were some pretty exciting fights on this card. It was UFC 300. So, I mean, you could have probably given bonuses out to a few other guys rather than this one. And you could have just, like I said with Dustin, given Max Holloway a performance bonus because Justin Gaethje didn't do a whole lot good in this fight other than, you know, be able to take a shot well. But, you know, so if it was a little bit more competitive, a little bit more back and forth, maybe I'd put it higher. But to be honest, if this fight was as it was and it went the distance, I might even put it in C tier. If that last 10 seconds had not happened, I don't think I would rank it up in B tier. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded in 2024, and that is Billy Ray Joff and Trey Waters, and this one is going into C tier. Now, this was kind of another example of what we've been talking about, where one guy's just really tough, but it wasn't just that he was tough. Billy Ray Joff is fucking crazy. Okay, and I mean that as a compliment, but also he could, you know, he's fucking nuts. Okay, just marching forward the whole time, and Trey Waters was kind of just picking him apart, like landing big shots too. Landed a illegal knee, which made me very angry watching it back. How there was a local referee in this fight, and he just didn't even acknowledge it. He didn't look to the judges and say, you know. Sometimes you'll see Mark Smith do this, where if there's a clash of heads and you can see a cut get caused, even if there's not, he'll turn to the officials and point to his head to let them know, hey, that damage was not done by a legal blow, that was done by an accidental clash of heads, or whatever it may be. This referee watched an illegal knee, blatantly illegal, not like I'm just fucking around, sticking my hand on the mat and whatever. Like, Billy Ray Joff was on his ass and got kneed in the noggin hard as fucking all get out. And you know what, dude? He didn't even acknowledge it either. He didn't look to the ref for anything. He just kept going, kept marching at him. Round two, he gets caught in a super tight guillotine. He just fights through it, keeps going forward, bloodied, beaten, all the rest of it. You could tell that he was exhausting Trey Waters. And the reason this fight isn't higher up, I think, is because both guys in round three were, like, done. I mean, the output between the significant strikes thrown even and landed in round number 2 compared to 3 had dropped off by 4 times, because the pace that Billy Ray Joff was forcing them to fight at was just so fucking insane that it was unsustainable. Okay, but if they would have been able to sustain it, I might have put it up a tier. Either way, dude, let us get to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded in 2024, and that's going to Edson Barboza versus Lerone Murphy, and this one's going into D. I don't even really know how this got fight of the night. I don't remember all the fights that were on that card along with it, but it wasn't that good, man. You know, it was a good performance by Lerone Murphy. I'm not trying to take away from that, but first couple rounds were basically Lerone Murphy very strategically, very safely, kind of just picking at Edson Barboza from range, like leg kicks, jabs, things like this. You know, mixing up his wrestling as well. There wasn't any insane moments, and it wasn't all that competitive. It was pretty one-sided. and I think it ended up being 4 rounds to 1, or maybe no, I think it was 50-45, maybe even a 10-8 thrown in there. But you know, no round was super competitive. Like I said, first 2 rounds were kind of just jab, leg kicks, things like that. Nothing insane happened, at least not from what I can remember. So, you know, while it was a good performance by Lerone Murphy, that's why it is ranked low on this list, okay? Moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. This one I rank quite highly. It is Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, and this one's going in A tier. Now, I have a feeling there's going to be people that don't like Islam Makhachev, which I'm not necessarily a massive fan of him either, that think it should be lower. Because Dustin Poirier wasn't necessarily the most deserving of a title shot at this point, but I don't think that matters here, at least. Maybe if we were talking about the title performance overall, but for Fight of the Night, which is what we are judging, I think this had all aspects of a good Fight of the Night. First of all, Poirier, the fact that he was such a big underdog, I think made it more exciting. I think Islam closed at like a minus 700. So he's supposed to go out there and just wash Dustin Poirier, and that doesn't happen, right? Poirier, it ends up being a fucking war. Both guys were bloodied. Poirier's nose was like Rory McDonald level of broken. Just absolutely brutal. Both guys took big shots. There was a ton of striking, which I don't think a lot of people anticipated, because Dustin Poirier did not only a good job defending takedowns, but also was making Islam work. So in the first round, I believe it was, Islam Makhachev had Poirier's back, and I bet you a lot of people thought the fight was over here because, you know, Dustin Poirier, historically speaking, doesn't do all that well in championship opportunities. He gets strangled basically every time, you know, and they were dry. Poirier does a good job defending that. Then he starts to defend the takedowns as the fight goes longer, and rather than Islam Makhachev doing like a Mateusz Gamrot, I'm just going to shove my face in your crotch, at least for most of his fights, he goes, okay, fuck it, we will strike then. And Islam had one of his major weapons taken away, which was his lead leg kick to the body, leg, head even, because Dustin Poirier is also a southpaw. It ended up being very competitive. Like I said, both guys landed big shots on the feet. And then Islam Makhachev digging in round 5 and getting a late finish was just fucking fantastic. You know, even if you're not a fan of Islam Makhachev, the fact that in round 5 he doesn't want to coast when he could have, like he would have won that decision, and he instead goes for a finish, I think that's noteworthy. Anyways, moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded. This one's going into D tier, and that is Carly Judas versus Gabriela Fernandez. Okay, dude, I don't understand it. Again, I will reiterate, this is a testament, in my opinion, to the fight card not being good in its entirety. If you have to give the Fight of the Night bonus to 2 unranked women who, while Carly Judas landed a shit ton of strikes in this fight, there was not a single knockdown, not a whole lot of damage gets done because of they are the fair sex and all, okay? It was a fun fight, but it was not, just look. And for the people getting irritated by me saying this shit about women's fights, I challenge you to find me one women's fight that is as exciting or more than Zhang Weili and Joanna Jędrzejczyk, because that's the one that everybody points to. And that was a fun fight, I'll give it that, right? But we'll have people that try to come up with other women's fights that were like this one, or Amanda Lemos-Shindern, and no fight is even close to a Zhang Weili and a Joanna Jędrzejczyk. But we get multiple men's fights every single year, if not more. You know, I mean, multiple. I didn't really give a specific number, did I? But that are as exciting, if not more. So, you know, I went and checked this fight out as I was looking all these up, and I was a little disappointed that they got a bonus. Now, I'm glad that Dana was giving some of the lower paid athletes the bonus, but, you know, it is what it is. Anyways, moving on to the next Fight of the Night bonus that was awarded in 2024. Another one for D tier, that is Cub Swanson and Andre Fili. I don't get this decision either, much like the one right before it. No fucking clue. This fight was 2 older dudes, long in the tooth, both not really that good anymore, right? And I understand Cub Swanson's had some exciting fights, okay? And I'm not trying to be shitty, but he's just no, you know, Not a whole lot of defense on display, but despite that, there wasn't a whole... Neither of these guys were bleeding or even looked overly damaged at all, to be quite frank, because they were just throwing single shots at each other from range, and there was a fuck ton of cage pushing as well. This was like a Holly Holm fight with a few single right hand throw. Like, I don't understand how this got fight of the night. Maybe it's just because of who was involved in it, or, you know, I don't know, but either way. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded, and we finally get another A tier spot, and this goes to Drew Dober and John Silva. This was such a good fight, man. I was live streaming this event, and I remember this fight very well. Very fun. I was, you know, screaming my way through it. John Silva did kind of start to run away with it a little bit, and credit to Drew Dober for being as tough as he did, because it could have got stopped a whole lot sooner. But it's not just that he's tough, right? Drew Dober is also constantly a threat. Even if he's damaged to shit, if he cracks you with a right hand, even if you've landed 100 on him, you're in trouble. You know, he can hit harder than most guys at lightweight. He can take a shot better than the vast majority of guys at lightweight. And that's a lot of what this fight was. And it's unfortunate, man, a little anticlimactic that it got a doctor stoppage in round number 3, but Drew Dober's face was fucking mangled. I'm not necessarily upset at the decision, though it would have been cool to see that third round, because Drew Dober would have more than willingly fought through it, you know. But absolute fantastic fucking fight. Again, if you've forgotten, you know, it, go back and watch it. Will not be disappointed. Moving on to the next fight of the night of 2024. And this one's going to Shara Magomedov versus Michael Oleksiejczuk. I'm putting this one in C tier. Now, honestly, it could go a little bit lower. This wasn't the most exciting matchup, although, you know, Shara damaged Michael Oleksiejczuk very early on, cut him open badly. Blood fucking everywhere. But Michael Oleksiejczuk's cornerman, or cutman rather, did a very good job at maintaining that throughout the course of the fight. So it didn't turn into an issue, which was good. But also, Michael Oleksiejczuk, I think what was exciting about this fight, for me anyways, because I've been kind of saying the entire time that Shara Magomedov is a little bit overrated, is that Michael Oleksiejczuk, who is a very good striker in his own right, was able to expose some holes in Shara's defense. His striking defense as well. This was mostly a striking performance from both guys. Land in big left hands, backing him up constantly. I think the reason it got fight of the night was because it was just a high level striking match, and we saw both guys have success. It was pretty fucking competitive. There was a bit of grappling. Michael Oleksiejczuk took the back in round number 2, if I'm not mistaken, and was threatening a choke at the bell. And then a bit of top control in round number 3. And like the Chepe Mariscal fight, watching this one back, I think Michael Oleksiejczuk could have won, if I'm being honest. But I would need to watch it, not just for the purpose of ranking it in terms of how exciting it was. I would need to judge it. But it was a very close competitive fight. I thought it was 1-1 going into the third. And kind of like the Chepe Mariscal fight, I guess. Both guys have really good technique. There was just a little bit less action, but that's to be expected because they are at, you know, higher weight class and all. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus awarded in 2024, and that is going to Dan Hooker and Mateusz Gamrot, and this shit's going into A tier. Thank God for Dan Hooker, because this fight could have been so boring. It really could have been. Mateusz Gamrot, oftentimes, when things start to get exciting, and look, I'm not, you know, I get it, okay? He's fighting with a high fight IQ. He's trying to fight to his strengths. He's not trying to get beat up on the feet if he doesn't need to. And I understand that, but I just think for the viewer, sometimes it's, you know, a little bit much, a little bit excessive. Because there are guys that do want to wrestle, that do want to grapple, that are more exciting than Mateusz Gamrot, right? There's Renato Moicano. There's guys like that. Guys who are trying to finish. Whereas Mateusz Gamrot, when things start to get a little hairy, he will just panic shoot. After panic shoot, and he'll stay on his knees knowing you can't hit him. Saw this against Rafael dos Anjos. Dos Anjos hurt him early in round number 1, and for the rest of that fight, Mateusz Gamrot was just shoving his face in his cup. Didn't manage to do a whole lot of damage or anything like that, but Dan Hooker is a fucking maniac absolute menace, okay? I picked Dan Hooker to win this fight, by the way. He was a pretty big underdog going into it. Landing good knees, shit like that, just picking Mateusz Gamrot apart, starting to defend takedowns, and force Gamrot to fight on the feet, which is why it turned into the fight that it did. So thank you to Dan Hooker, and I guess to Mateusz Gamrot. He was kind of forced into engaging in this fight, but either way. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus that was awarded in 2024. This one was Jared Cannonier and Kyle Barrio. Now I'm putting this one in B tier. I think some people might have it lower on the list, but I think this is a fair spot. It was kind of like Holloway Gaethje, where it was a little one-sided in favor of Kyle Barrio. But Cannonier, like Drew Dober, always fucking dangerous. So even though Kyle Barrio won 4 rounds to 1, but also had a 10-8 in there, right? 2 49-45 scorecards. He could have got hurt and finished at any moment, and Jared Cannonier did land some big shots throughout the course of this fight. Also, Jared Cannonier could have been finished in the 5th round. He fought through it. The ref let it go on, and it did. So, you know, like I said, little one-sided, but lots and lots and lots of good action. Lots of damage being done. Quite a few moments where you thought somebody was in trouble, and even though it was one-sided, the threat of Cannonier putting you out cold with one shot is always present. It is omnipresent. Moving on to the next fight of the night in 2024, and that is going to be Jessica Andrade and Natalia Silva. Bro, I don't get it. I'm really not trying to be that shitty, but these just aren't it, man. It's just not it. I went and looked up the stats as I also sped through it. I watched it on 2x speed because I was trying to get through it as quickly as I possibly could, if I'm being brutally fucking honest, okay? This fight wasn't that good. Natalia Silva on her bicycle the entire time, which is fine. She's trying to stay away from the power shots of Andrade, which is basically just an overhand right. Okay, Andrade is one of those fighters who seemingly just will never evolve ever. And no knockdowns, no, like, I mean, dude, knockdowns are rare in women's fights anyways, but it's just, I don't know, man. It belongs in here, okay? Fucking argue with me in the comments if you want. Anyways, dude, moving on to the next fight of the night performance bonus, or next fight of the night bonus, pardon me, awarded in 2024, and that is Alex Pereira versus Khalil Roundtree Jr. I'm putting this one in B tier because it could go in A, but no, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to show my unbiasedness, okay? Alex Pereira is one of my favorite fighters, if not my favorite fighter, but listen, it was an awesome fight, but I think, 1, there might be a bit of recency bias. 2, I think that a lot of the reason why it was exciting, and we've spoken about this a few times, was that Khalil Roundtree Jr. was so willing to take as much damage as he did, okay? The first 2 rounds, while Khalil Roundtree won them, they were, 1, pretty competitive, and 2, there wasn't a lot going on, right? It wasn't like we saw dudes almost get finished, aside from Alex Pereira, you know, in that little, like, flash knockdown where he got back up immediately after whiffing on a question mark kick. There wasn't insane rounds. The insanity of it was that so many people had basically just written off Khalil Roundtree Jr. and did not expect him to land basically fucking anything. And if I'm being quite honest, I don't know that Alex Pereira thought he would. Now, there's 2 ways this could go. Either Alex Pereira had no respect for Khalil Roundtree Jr. whatsoever, and my evidence of this I would point to is the way he ran out with that giant, like, Fabricio Verdum jumping kick. And I mean, he put himself in a very bad position. The fact that he was kind of just whiffing on big head kicks that he wasn't necessarily setting up and shit like that. So one option is he didn't respect him. The second option, which might be the more likely one, is that he was trying to goat Khalil Roundtree Jr. into keeping that same energy, basically. Like, if I come out and I'm like a bat out of hell, I'm going to get that back. I'll be able to stay safe for the most part, and he will tire out, and then I will pick up the pace as the fight goes on. And it kind of looks like that's what happened, at least in hindsight. Because round 3 and rounds 4 were not overly competitive, right? I mean, Khalil Roundtree Jr. just basically got the shit beaten out of him. Rounds 1 and rounds 2 were competitive. Khalil edged them, but there wasn't an insane amount of damage done. It was just Khalil Roundtree Jr. landing a few more left hands than people thought he would. So while I love this fight, and I love this performance from Alex Pereira because it showed that even through adversity, he can dig deep, he can get finishes late in the fight, and even though he was sick and injured and all the rest of it, he's still going to show up and fuck dudes up, right? And do a ton of damage and also make adjustments mid-fight, which I like too. The body jab setup was not working for the left hook because Khalil's a shorter opponent, also a southpaw, very easy for him to counter compared to other guys. So then he goes to, I'm gonna bait him, make him throw, and I'll slip and counter with my right hand, and just a whole bunch of, you know, very detailed things that I appreciate. And it was a fun fight, but I don't think it was one of the best ones this year compared to the ones that are sitting in A tier. I think it, based on the other fights in B tier, I think it is there fairly. Moving on to the next fight of the night performance bonus given in 2024, and that goes to Brandon Royval and Tatsuro Taira. Now, there's going to be some people that maybe didn't think this fight was exciting at all because it was very grappling heavy, and I understand that if you don't like that at all, but this kind of grappling to me is very exciting. Crazy scrambles, very much back and forth, 2-2 going into the fifth. Brandon Royval has to dig deep. Now, Brandon Royval made a ton of mistakes in this fight that I think made this fight a lot closer than it needed to be. Allowed Tatsuro Taira to get into the grappling, which is exactly where he wanted to be. I think that if Brandon Royval was able to keep this fight, or not able to, if he decided to keep this fight on the feet, it would have maybe ended in the third round. Or there were a lot of moments where Royval was doing good on the feet, hurting Taira. Taira would shoot, and then Brandon Royval would be like, okay, let's grapple. But then Taira would end up reversing it and taking his back. So it was very back and forth, very good scrambles, very good submission defense from both guys, and some pretty crazy moments as well on the feet with Royval hurting Taira, and Taira, you know, starting to land as the fight went on. But it wasn't the craziest fight. Very high level grappling match and pretty back and forth. So I think it's fair to put it in C tier. Moving on to the next fight of the night bonus awarded in 2024, and it goes to Darren Elkins and Daniel Pineda. Darren Elkins, I mean, has constant fucking fight of the nights, okay? This guy's a maniac in the best sense of the word, although you can tell he's starting to age a little bit, and not in a good way. His face is melting, it looks like, okay, if we're being honest. Lots of blood in this one. Lots of damage. Daniel Pineda looked like a different person entirely. I mean, that was where most of the damage was. Darren Elkins got a little cut above the left eyebrow, I think, and for whatever reason, it was really fucking bothering him. He kept touching it and trying to wipe it. Meanwhile, you see Daniel Pineda just blood leaking everywhere, you know, and his eye swelled up insane. The right eye, if I'm not mistaken, was basically closed, and for whatever reason, his corner didn't put the inswell on it. So I don't know what the fuck was going on there. But Darren Elkins did all that while escaping a ton of submission attempts. Now, if you go look on the stats for this fight, they gave Pineda 2 official submission attempts. What the fuck are these people watching? We saw this at UFC 306 with Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. They gave her 1 or 2 submission attempts when she had tried like 4 or 5. I don't understand. At what point do you call it an attempt? Okay, Daniel Pineda had like a 2 submission attempts, 2 guillotine attempts in the first couple minutes, you know. An anaconda was thrown in there, an anaconda that, by the way, was initially a Darce, and then we had like a rear naked choke attempt. We had an armbar attempt that was close as well. I can think of at least 5 submission attempts off the top of my head, okay, and they gave him 2. Very strange to me, but you know, Darren Elkins managed to fight through them and land big damage from top, which I was very interested to see how this fight was going to play out, actually, leading up to it, because I thought to myself, well, Darren Elkins likes to wrestle a lot, but Daniel Pineda is very dangerous on the ground, and Darren Elkins shows he has fantastic submission defense, like very high level submission defense. Either way, dude, let's move on to the S tier fight of the night, the one and only S tier fight of the night. And I don't think many people are going to disagree with me, but if there's any that come up before the end of the year that are in competition with this one, let me know. and we can amend that list, or I will do a poll to see if it should be amended. Daniel Zellhuber and Esteban Ribovics. This is like one of my, maybe all time, one of my favorite fights. Such a good fucking fight, dude. I mean, at first, I thought maybe there's a bit of recency bias here. This was the most exciting fight at UFC 306, especially considering that card only had 2 finishes. And not a lot of the decisions were super exciting, but then we got this one, you know? So I thought to myself, maybe it was just recency bias, but right before I did this video, I went back and watched some of these. Some of them I watched at 2x speed, but some of them I just watched them all the way through. This one I watched all the way through at normal speed. Still, over a month later, you know, month and a half later, whatever it is, one of my favorite fights of all time. Such a good fight. I picked Ribovics to win this fight. Genuinely could have gone either way. He was a pretty big underdog going into that. That's why I mention it. Fuck, man. Both guys get hurt. It could have been stopped at one point, and I think it was round 2. Daniel Zellhuber was hurt badly and trying to get away from Ribovics as best as he could. Ribovics would not go to the body, which was very frustrating to me because Zellhuber was doing a good job at, you know, blocking some of the shots or rolling with shots up top, even being as hurt as he was. And credit to, I think it was Keith Peterson, I could be wrong, for not stopping that fight, because we ended up getting a fantastic round 3 out of it. But this was like the Morgan Charrier and Chepe Mariscal fight on steroids, though. Perfect technique from both guys. Different styles. Daniel Zellhuber, kind of like Charrier, long at range, poking, prodding, beautiful jab, beautiful teep, things like this. Setting traps, trying to draw you into a head kick. His boxing is fantastic. Esteban Ribovics, in my opinion, has a bit more of like a Dutch style kickboxing, where the leg kicks are real, like chopping. You know, he puts a lot behind them, and just the hooks and the combinations that he throws, to me, come off as more Dutch kickboxing type combinations. Fucking amazing. So you had one guy that wants to get in a little bit tighter, one dude that wants to keep it at a maybe kicking range, and it was a battle between that constantly. Like I said, both dudes got hurt badly. Daniel Zellhuber was almost finished, but Esteban Ribovics was in trouble a few moments as well. My favorite fight of the year by far, and probably, you know, top 10 at least favorite fights of all time. And this is over a month later, so it's not just due to recency bias. Anyways, dude, that's it. This is all of the fight of the night so far this year. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, if you would have moved any of these around, if you would have put some higher or lower, or if you had a different S tier fight altogether. Whatever it may be, let me know. Like and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. It takes me a lot of time to put these kinds of videos together, but I figured since a lot of you liked the last one, we would do it again. And I've got a few more on the way as well. If you have any tier list ideas, let me know down in the comments below as well, because I would be more than willing to do some of those, if there's enough people that like your comment or whatever it may be. Anyways, toodles, goodbye. See you at the next video. See ya.